Hello.
Hey, what's going on?
Taking up all your money, taking up all your time.
Do you feel like you're very lifted up by the people around you, or do you feel like it's like more cutthroat than it is like supportive of other artists?
I think in my experience, I've been very lucky to meet a lot of people that I really appreciated them as artists. And they appreciate me as an artist as well. And they have lifted me up, I think. But at the same time, I do think that there are people out there because an independent artist, again, like, it's a broad term, but it's like there's people in the scene, I'll say that they really want like an end goal. You know, like they really want like something that somebody else had. I think a lot of the beef that comes out of like indie scenes comes from like a place of jealousy from what I've experienced. I have never personally been like, I've never beefed with anybody because I'm not like that. I'm somebody who's very much like, oh man, it's, you know, like it's all love. But I think the difference is that when you're a huge figure, like a mainstream figure, low key, obviously some artists start beef on purpose because it gets people talking about them. And when you get people talking about you and your beef is like publicized, then they listen to your music. Like when Drake and Pusha T were going at it, for example, that's a great example I think to use. That brought not only a bunch of Drake fans to be like, no, Drake's the greatest, and they went back and streamed a ton of his music because he was on their mind, but it also got Pusha T recognized for how good he is at rapping. You know, a lot of people, like, Push was big in like this circle of like people who were really into hip-hop for a long time. But when Pusha T smacked Drake silly in public at one of the peak years for Drake to be an artist, and like not only chokeslammed his public image, but chokeslammed him lyrically, chokeslammed him musically, delivery-wise, the list goes on and on, it brought attention to him from Drake's fan base, where they said, oh, Pusha T good. Me listen to Pusha T now. You know what I mean? And now Push is in the conversation for like some of the best in the game. The difference is that a beef in the independent community is more cutthroat because there's no publicity to gain out of it. Because it's your fan base versus their fan base, sure, but like when you're an independent artist, you're relatively small where there's nothing to gain in that regard. It's more so about defending you as an artist. It really is more of an actual fight or a disagreement than a mainstream beef, which like your PR team can just cover up and make disappear if it actually gets serious, like Drake's did. Notice how he immediately stopped responding when Pusha T went after the fact that he had an illegitimate child. And then all of a sudden Drake was putting on this facade of like, I'm a good dad, see? Push was smart with how he attacked Drake. He made a spectacle out of it so he could gain stuff, but he made it in such a way where Drake looked so inauthentic, again there's that word, to his audience, that Drake gained nothing out of it. He only lost. He lost a $3 million.
So you're saying like for indie rappers it's more like cutthroat because there's not really anything to gain from it since they're so small that no one's gonna care. But when you're more like famous, it's like walking on a tightrope where what you can say can boost your fame like exponentially, but if you go too far or go the wrong way or just like a little slip up, it could just take all of it away to like the person you're beefing.
I think that's a good way to look at it, yeah, because like when it's the independent scene, you're really only beefing within the people in the scene, you know? It's like, if you're talking like a small community, that's what I'm assuming we're defining by indie community. You know, like we're talking like Jub Jub and the Gub Gubs, like a band no one knows, you know what I mean? And they beat with Gub Gub and the Gub Gubs, another band they don't know. And it's like, it's really about the actual argument itself. It is still like true to that. But when you become so mainstream, almost like, I don't want to say too big to fail because that's never been true in history. But when you become that big where it's like a corporation, like Drake, as an artist, think about this, actually fuels like multiple people's salaries. He's a business at this point. Any publicity is good publicity applies. You know what I mean? So like Drake even losing that beef was still in some ways beneficial just because it got people talking about Drake. Didn't matter how, because Drake has enough people where there's people who will never find out this happened. There are people that don't care that it happened. The only person who gained from it was Pusha T, who was a smaller entity. And it, like, literally, like, astronomically pushed him forward in the conversation. So yeah, I think that is a good way to look at it.
How important would you say that original sound is to popularity?
Well, that's interesting because, you know, there's a lot of people who are original. You know, originality is an interesting concept in and of itself. Again, I'll get a little philosophical, I guess. You know, for example, one of the most famous pieces of music from a very original composer, you'll probably learn about him down the line if you keep on with music studies, is John Cage. John Cage was an experimental producer who did stuff that was so annoying he got booed out of Carnegie Hall and almost started a riot. But he's a musical genius because his whole goal with music, a very original thought, so to speak, he wanted to define what music actually was and push the boundaries of it. Some would call him experimental. A lot of people value the term experimental. I would love to ask the question, would you value experimental if you knew his most famous track is, I believe, 4 minutes and 33 seconds of silence? The sheet music for his track, 433, by John Cage, one of the most famous pieces of music of the 20th century, I'd say, is him. It literally says on the sheet music, crack your knuckles, put your hands on the piano, and do nothing for 4 minutes and 33 seconds.
That's very funny.
But it's genius, isn't it? Isn't that music? It's a performance. It's sound, because he said the music is whatever's in the room. Because there's no such thing as silence. So originality, I think, is important because, look, at the end of the day, there are not an infinite number of melodies. There are not an infinite number of harmonies. Unless we get into microtonal music, which technically there is infinite things between, like, the limits of two objects, but that's a weird paradox of math that we'll probably learn about in, like, calculus and stuff. Originality is interesting because in some way, shape, or form, originality when it comes to music is recontextualization. You know, I'm using the same keyboard that Mozart used. There's a lot of things that have happened in between those keys. You know what I mean? You look at somebody like Cecil Taylor, he's a free jazz artist. He literally makes music by smashing his hands on the keyboard and hearing if anything made sense and following that. That's his version of jazz. You know, there's so many things, and we like to classify things as human beings too. You know, there's genre, for example. Genre was a thing that was actually started as a way to categorize music to sell music. And if we want to talk about the unfortunate history of racism in the United States, if you want to know a pretty messed up fact, the first two genres of music were race music and everything else. I am not kidding. It's a way to define music by certain characteristics. So when you say I'm a hyperpop artist, right? Well, what is hyperpop? We watched it come to life in real time, and you're like, well, the bass is really boomy, and the sounds are really like internet-y, and there's chipmunk vocals with a lot of auto-tune on it sometimes. It's like, okay, so somebody can take that formula and go, well, then I'm a hyperpop artist too. Are they? I don't know. That's why when a lot of people ask me what genre I am, you know, some people like to go, Chris made Pineapple Soda, but also did a rap track with its belief. Is he a rapper or is he a singer? Like, I get that question all the time, and I tell them I'm goof-core. It's something I completely made up because that allows me as an artist the freedom to do really whatever I want. To get back to your actual point, which is originality important? Yes. Because when somebody's heard something the same way enough times, they get bored with it. Our job as musicians is to create something that evokes emotion, you know, through sound. It's a really primal form of art, which is why I think music is like so beautiful. There's an infinite number of things you can do with it, so there's always something original to do. But at the same time, if you do it the same way as somebody else, it just doesn't have that same spark. You know, they'll go, oh, this has been done before, I've heard this before. So an original sound can be taken in a lot of different ways then, which is beautiful. You can try and follow the same, you know, type of genre, for example, you're interested in pursuing, but use a guitar instead of a synthesizer, or use a cajon instead of a drum kit. And that becomes something a little bit more original. You can add in samples, which is literally musical quotation, where you're taking somebody's idea but recontextualizing it in a new way. you're not trying to be someone you're not, which is posturing. And there's even times where that works in music for sure. You know, there's some people who talk about having money and doing like really cool things with it and having a car that do not have those things. Shocker. But you know, I think creating something in a way that, you know, takes your influences and recontextualizes them in a way that is unique to you. For example, with my music, a lot of people are like, where did you get the ideas for Pineapple Soda? They're like, who are your influences, right? Because everybody has some, even if they don't know about them. One of my biggest influences for Pineapple was definitely someone like Caro Benito. That group is really cool. They make really bubblegummy, sugary pop, which is interesting to hear the perspective of, at that time, a 21-year-old college student. But at the same time, I also took influence from people like the Gap Band, which is one of my favorite bands of all time. They're like a 1980s like synth folk outfit that does some really, really kicking music. I used to listen to them in the car with my mom. So I associate the Gap Band with nostalgia for my youth, and also feeling better about things that used to happen to me when I was a little kid in school, because of being on home. Somebody else might think about the Gap Band and go, they're the worst band in the universe, and I'm going to take influence from them because I'm making fun of them. Like, that's where the originality lies. I think it lies in the intention of how you're using your influences and recontextualizing them. That's a really heady thought for a freshman year music paper or English paper, I know. I think the magic word with a lot of the answer, with like originality in music, if you want to sum it up, is it depends. You know, there's a lot of ways to be original. Like, that Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared video on YouTube got so pretty good with like, let's get creative, and then they get really freaky with it, which is creative, but it's like, okay, let's not be creative anymore. You know, it's like...
So is it like creative in a good enough way, or like creative in the way where like you feel it, and then people start realizing the originality, and then they also, you know, what's the word? They empathize.
There's good originality and there's bad originality. You know, it's like, you know, and it's defined by the listener. So I think what's important is, like, you know, when it comes to originality, is treating it with care and knowing that there's no such thing as like true originality. You know, there's no like original piece of music. But what's beautiful about like the concept of originality is you can apply that adjective to anything. You can be original in how you recontextualize something. You can have an original cover of something, you know what I mean? Like, where you're literally replicating the song, but doing it in a unique way. It's about trying to tap in to that version of yourself and your experiences with them. I think originality comes out of trying not to be unoriginal, if that makes any sense. So I think it's pretty important. I think that made a lot of sense, actually. That was pretty fire. Go, Chris. High five.
Is there anything you'd like to shout out, or any advice you'd like to give to the people that are watching at home in my PIB English with 9th grade class?
Well, I will say the same thing that I think I told you before. Hi, high schoolers. What's going on? I don't know, but life is a cool thing. There's a lot of cool things that are going to happen. I almost went to Brown to become a lawyer, and then I realized that that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to pursue music and be passionate about that. So I'm telling you right now, life has weird ways of doing it. Enjoy the ride. Enjoy your time as a student before you become the master in something. It's all good. And I'll tell you what I told Blaze before. Success is doing what you love longer than anybody else is willing to put up with failure, because then you're the only one left. So when you find something you're passionate about, pursue it. Even if it makes you happy, even if some people think it's weird, you want to be a Twitch streamer, do it. You know, like, be passionate about what you do, and enjoy yourselves. High school's cool. There's some cool stuff that can happen. So keep learning, keep doing fire stuff, and I don't know, make something that makes you happy. So bye.
You see, once upon a time I was a kid stumped on a stoop, listening to Ramona, wondering if I'd be giving flowers too. Staring at that same moon from a top floor city view, I grew a bouquet just to throw back to the old me, that's the truth. R.I.P. Bozo, I get powered up like I got blessings at the altar from the motherfucking chozo. I'm in my prime stretching, but I still don't quite know where to go. But that's the beauty of it, smell the rose and watch the fireworks in slow-mo. The crazy thing is when you grow up and maybe blow up, you're still that same soul sitting on patios by the door. But if life's a movie, to get where you want, you need a trilogy. Enjoy this time with your allies and always dream of bigger scenes. Success is doing what you love longer than anyone else. You'll be the only one left, y'all got a story to tell. So stretch it.